Today we're going to sketch and paint these sweet little farmhouse carrots. Make sure you stay to the end to get the bonus video on how I made this frame.
Hey everyone, it's Susie Lee with Ballerina Boutique. Tonight we're going to do, I saw a really cool picture on Pinterest, and it wasn't a painting, but it inspired me because these carrots in this picture were like farmhouse carrots. Like you go to the farmer's market and you buy a bunch of carrots, and they're not all orange. Some of them are like yellow, some of them are burgundy, some of them are just orange or almost whitish. So there's a whole plethora of them together laying down. And I got this little farmer's market from the Dollar Tree. This is an acrylic paper. So it is a 9x12. This will fit on here nicely and still give me room to paint my carrots. And what I want to do is I want to make it like it's on a piece of barnwood. That's what the photograph looked like. It looked like it was on a piece of kind of bluish barnwood, sort of. So maybe what I should do is just do a little pencil marking. Like right here. Don't go beyond these lines. Yeah, I'll give me kind of a guide so that I can kind of keep my carrots over on this end of the pond. So what I want to do is start with my first carrot, and I want to start with it coming, some of them are going this way and some of them are going this way, as if they've been brought home from the market, the dirt washed off of them, and they were just kind of laid out, spread out to dry. That's what these look like, and they are so pretty.
Okay, I have enhanced this as much as it will be enhanced by HD so that you could see better the pencil drawing. I know it's very light, but what I'm doing here is I'm just going in and doing a little bit of an illusion of the carrots, just a little pencil sketching real quickly so that I have something to go by when we start the painting process. And you can kind of see a little bit of the light pencil sketching. I'm not doing an exact replica of all the carrots that were in the picture, just a bunch going one way and a bunch kind of going the other. And I'm doing a little shading in between there to give me an idea of where the dark colors need to be. And because I don't have a photographic memory, like most people, I have to keep looking up. You develop that muscle memory over time. And here I'm just going to add those barnwood slats and get them ready for painting. Okay, I'm going to speed this video up in the painting segment just for the sake of time. I'm going to set out my color palette here. I've got podge yellow, I've got a burnt orange, I have happy green, and I have a mossy green as well. The happy green is the lighter one here I have in my hand. And a little spot of white for some mixing and highlights. First off, I'm going to be mixing in some podge yellow and some white, and starting at the top, I'm going to be making the carrot a little darker and going toward the bottom. I'm going to be lightening them all up toward the bottom. They're variegated in color, so I'll be putting some white highlights in and maybe even a little dot of orange here and there in the bottom. I'm going to use the brown and puddle it with a little bit of water and grunging it up with a little bit of brown. And then that's carrot number 1. Okay, carrot number 2, I'm going to be doing a custom mix because I want the carrot to be a little like a plum color. So I'm going to mix a cranberry with Prussian blue, and then to get it a little bit more of a berry color, I'm going to add just a little bit of pure red into the mix and even a little bit of white, and I think that's right where we want it. In the end, I end up going back and making it a little bit more red because I really wanted it to look more like a plum than an eggplant. And that's the reason I keep the white on the palette, because The white is kind of like a stabilizer for all the colors to make it slightly lighter and for highlighting. Then I sprinkle in a little bit more cranberry, like hot sauce. I paint a lot like I cook. As I said, I'm looking for a berry color, and these carrots actually come in those colors. If you've ever gone to the farmer's market, or some of you may grow your own, you know that they come in a wide variety of colors. I'm trying to achieve what you would find in nature. Now, working toward the bottom of this purple carrot, I'm actually adding in a little bit of orange and kind of giving it an ombre effect, carefully shading and lightening it with my white and my script liner brush, scrubbing those colors in where they connect at the line, then going back in and adding some highlights and blending streaks throughout the carrot. And of course, adding the vertical lines that you see in carrots. I'm doing those in a slight burnt orange over the plum, and blending is key. So take your time and make sure you don't see any lines that aren't blended well. The third carrot is a burnt orange. It's the little carrot that got stuck behind the big carrot. The fourth carrot's going to be a little bit of a darker yellow, and I'm going to put it right up next to that plum carrot at the top. And I'm going to add a little bit of that plum right into the carrot and blend it heading downward toward the root, outlining it with my script liner and filling it in with lots of lighter colors toward the bottom. And at this point, I go back to the other carrots and add the little horizontal lines that you find in carrots with the darker color, which brings us to carrot number 5. I'm going to make this one orange, so I go right in and cover my lines with the script liner brush, tracing it out and butting it right up next to that yellow one all the way down to the root and coming back up the other side. And just like a real carrot, it's a little crooked. And here I bring in my 1/4-inch chisel brush, and I dilute it with water just a little bit so that the paint flows better. And I'm just going to get right in there and use the side of that chisel for control and detail. And I tone it down a little bit with some white and give it a little variation in color. Now we're going back to the plum, but it's going to be more of a berry plum. I think adding more of the red and white in there really lightened up the value a lot. And I'm using my chisel brush again. I'm going in and filling that carrot in once it's outlined with a variation of all the darks and light plums, taking it all the way down to the root. This kind of reminds me of a beet color. I also go back to the original plum carrot and scrub in a little of the lighter plum as well, just a slight shade lighter, and now it's perfect. For the next carrot, I'm going to use what's left in my brush and add a little of that berry color in and make this one a more berry color with a couple streaks of white blended in. Have you ever seen carrots this color? If you were painting these, what color would you paint them? It looks like I'm dueling paintbrushes here with the script liner and the chisel brush back and forth, but one does the detail and the other one makes quicker work. Next up, this next carrot's going to be another variation of the berry color and a different value and tone. Do you think this is something you might like to try? It's really quite therapeutic and cathartic. Have a bad day, come home and crack open some paints. It's a low-cost craft, and the biggest investment is really just your time. I love trying new styles of painting and playing with colors and tones and shades and values. It's so much fun. And like I always say, what's the worst that can happen? It's just paint. Okay, last carrot on the list here. We're going to be mixing up a little yellow and orange, blending in some white toward the root. And I love adding highlights of yellow on the orange. So much so that I think I'm going to go back and add a little more to the other two. And also adding some of the berry and red colors into the plum now that they're dry. And just making sure they're blended well. I know it's kind of hard to see, but you'll see it in the final photos. Now about that green paint I put on my palette, we're going to need to water that down a little bit. Good thing about acrylics is you can reconstitute them, so it's absolutely no problem at all. See how nice it gets, very wet and movable with a little bit of water. So now we're going to be putting in the greenery of the carrots, and I'm just taking my script liner brush and I'm giving it some swooping motions upward, just giving it a little bit of a carrot top, just like you would see in a real carrot. Um, and no rhyme or reason, just get in there and mix your greens up a little bit. Next, I'm taking my chisel brush and putting it into the darker green that I mixed with a little bit of black, made it kind of a forest green. And all you do is just take that chisel brush on its edge and just press down to form the little leaves of the carrot. Really super simple. And going back in now with another color green and just kind of mixing it up, some light, some dark, some in between. Really no rhyme or reason, just making sure that I'm filling in all the white space back there. Okay, now it's time to mix up some blues for that barnwood. I have a sterling blue and I also have something called French blue. I mix the two together and I think they make a really good pairing with a little bit of white mixed in and also some Prussian blue. So this gives it the streaking effect that gives it a wood grain look. Here I'm putting in the darker color for the slats of the barnwood and just going in and filling it in with various tones and shades of blue. Once that's filled in, I'll go back and grab some of the white and just put some streaks of white in there and then carefully blend them. And you'll see me go in and reshade those little cracks in the slats with a little bit of dark shadowing with my script liner brush, making sure that that stays nice and dark. And it really doesn't matter what shade of blue you pick up, because as you saw in the photo, there's all different shades and tones of blue. So don't worry about that. Just keep picking up different shades and go back in with the white and blend that in. And it gives it a little bit of wood grain effect. Putting in the last slat on the right here, finishing that up, streaks of white. And this is one of those projects where you really need to just trust the process. You can always go back in the end and tweak to your heart's content. Now we have to carry the blue through the carrots to the underside of them as they're laying on top of a table. So I go back in, I make the little lines, and sometimes just little dots is all it takes just to get that blue in there, going back in and filling all of that in. It does seem like a tedious process, but with a script liner brush and it's important to have the right tools, but it just took a little bit of time to get in there and kind of reminds me of the old paint by numbers. You had to do it very slowly and carefully, and there were a lot of little spots, but in the end, you got it done, right? Now remember where I shaded in between the carrots? That's why I did it, so that I would know where to go in and make it darker. That's the shadowing of it, and it makes it look a little bit more realistic when you have the lights and the darks and the shadowing. And I'm using the Prussian blue for those dark shadows. Ooh, dark shadows. Who remembers that? That was a blast from the past, wasn't it? Okay, here I'm just kind of blending the dark and the light from the shadowing, kind of blending them in an ombre effect and going it all the way down to the bottom. And once we have the base color of blue in between the carrots, then I can go back in and reestablish the lines if there's any spots that show the slats in the lines. You'll want that darker. And I'll also go back in and reestablish any kind of lighter wood grain effect. Okay, just as I said, we're going to turn it in the other direction. And with putting the white in there, I want to make sure that as throughout the piece, I've blended all the colors together very nicely. And you can establish that by adding just a little bit of water to your brush, or you can shear it with your finger. It's called a shearing effect, where it kind of blends everything together. Okay, now I'm just taking those dark shadows in the Prussian blue and bringing them down a little bit more, making them a little bit more prominent. And now we're going to go back up to the top and fill in all of that white space there with some greenery. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do there, but um, I felt like the greenery was the best way to do it. And I just went in with that chisel brush and made a few leaves. And now I'm going to take a little chip brush and get in there with a little bit of watered down kind of that mossy green mixed with some of that happy green. And we're going to create a background of greenery now. Because it's nicely watered down, you can kind of go over the greenery that's already there, and that's okay. It just kind of mutes it. And you're doing it with a pouncing motion as opposed to a swiping motion. But what you can do is go back over it after it's been dried and reestablish that leaf pattern over top of the carrots so that it's a little bit more prominent and you see it a little bit better. And what this does is it gives it depth because you're going to have leaves that are muted in the background and you're going to have more prominent leaves. Next, I'm going to get out my Farmer's Market stencil that I got from the Dollar Tree. And we're just going to go in with coal black, making sure that my stencil brush has got very, very little paint on it. I do a pouncing motion. Some people swirl, some people pounce. I like to pounce so that my pattern is nice and clean when I pull up the stencil. And here's the unveiling. I think it's beautiful. And I'm loving that little rooster. Just a few more details here. I'm going in with black, real fine Tombow pen. I love these markers. They are not smear proof and waterproof. So I have a little trick that I hold a piece way off in the distance and I hit it with a fine mist of hairspray and I give that 2 or 3 coats like that, letting it dry in between. Then you're able to go in with a sealer if you want it to be sealed. Okay, here are my final thoughts, and stay tuned to the end.
But it did. It helped to define the carrots. But I'm probably going to go back in. I'm going to put some wood grain in here. I'm going to work on some little squiggly lines and put some wood grain in and fine tune it. So the next time you see it, it's going to be all pulled together. And then hopefully I can get to Lowe's or Home Depot and grab some shims. And maybe that's another thing we can do is build us a little frame for this and frame it. That would be cute, right? All right, guys, have a good night. Love you. See you later. Bye.
We need love, we need laughter, we need happy ever after. We need kindness, we need smiles, we need friends for miles and miles. We need birds, we need bees, we need 1,000-year-old trees. We need fish in the stream, we need hopes and we need dreams. But it seems to me that everyone wants the same thing, some comfort and some peace of mind. So if you love your brother and he would love another, wouldn't be so hard to find.
Comment, like, and subscribe for more fun DIYs from Bella Lena Boutique.